Very good morning, dear children. Dear children, today we are going to start History Chapter 7, that is Civilizing the Native and Educating the Nation. So, who are the natives? The people who are living in a nation. So, we are talking about here Indian people. Fine. So, children, in the earlier chapters, you have seen how the British rule affected the lives of the Nawabs, Rajas, peasants, tribal people, and children. As you know from the heading only, we are talking about education. So, now in this chapter, we are going to see how this British rule is going to have the impact effect on the life of the students. Children, now children, see, British came to India just to for the territorial conquest, as well as they just wanted to control the revenues, means they wanted profit. Fine, children, everybody knows this. Now children, additional to this, they also felt that they are on a cultural mission. Fine. So, what is that? What was that cultural mission? They thought that they had to civilize the natives. Fine. They had to change their customs and values. Whom we are talking about? About the Indians. Fine. Now, what changes they need to be introducing, and how they can make the Indians civilized, how they can educate them, how they can make them civilized and made into what the British believe were good subjects. Now, how the Britishers will be able to put Indians into which British thought were the good subjects. The British could find no simple answer to these questions. They continued to be debated for many decades. For so many years, decades means 10 years. So, for so many years, they thought about this topic and they debated on this topic. Fine. How the British saw education. Now, how they look at the education, what they thought about education. See, children, let us look at what the British thought and did, what they think about it, and what they act. How some of the ideas of the education. Now, how these ideas they were even taken for granted, and how they evolved. Fine. And children, in the process of this inquiry, we will also see, children, how the Indians reacted to these British ideas. Fine. How they developed their own views and how Indians were to be educated. They made up some mind according to which they were going to educate the Indians. The tradition of Orientalism. Fine. Now, Orientalism, what is Orientalism? See, when we have knowledge of, languages and the culture of the Asia, fine. So that means more than one language, more than two languages, you can say. Fine. So that is Orientalism. Now, children, the story starts in 1783, when a person whose name was William Jones, he arrived in Calcutta. He had an appointment as a junior judge at the Supreme Court. So that the company had set up. So the company had set up a Supreme Court in Calcutta, and in 1783, and this William Jones, he was appointed as a junior judge there. Now, he was expert in law, but Jones was also a linguist. Now, who's a linguist? Someone who knows and studies several languages. So he was very keen, very excited to learn new languages. Fine. So what all he had studied till now, he studied Greek and Latin and Oxford, and he knew French and English as well. He picked up Arabic also from a friend, and had also learned Persian. Now, what he did at Calcutta? Now, at Calcutta, he was spending many hours of the day with a Pandit. Now, why Pandit was coming to him? Pandit was teaching him, fine, the Sanskrit language, the grammar, the poetry. So, he was also interested in the Indian languages, fine. Soon, he was studying ancient Indian text. After that, he started studying the Indian text, fine, on different subjects like law, philosophy, religion, politics, morality, arithmetic, medicine, and so many sort of sciences. Fine. Now, what he discovered? He discovered that his interest, whatever interest he was having, the same interest was shared by many of the British officials which were living in Calcutta at that time. So, who were they? Englishmen like Henry Thomas Colebrook and Nathaniel Halhet. They were also doing the same things like him. They were also discovering the Indian, ancient Indian heritage, and they also want to do the mastery in, Indian languages, and they were translating the Sanskrit and Persian works into English. Now he joined together with them and Jones set up Asiatic Society of Bengal, and they started a general named Asiatic Researchers. Now Jones and Colebrook, they they were representing a particular attitude towards India. They had a different attitude. They shared a deep respect for the ancient cultures. So whatever culture India had, they had a deep respect for that. For India as well as for their own countries, as well as for their Western culture. Fine. Now the Indian past. Now Indian civilization. Now, what they thought about Indian civilization, they said that they have attained, its glory in the ancient past. So, the past of India was the Indian past was glorious, but subsequently it declined. So, they thought that in order, if they want to understand India, so it is very important to discover the sacred and legal texts that were produced in the ancient period. So they just want to discover the text which were produced in the ancient period. For only those texts could reveal the real ideas and laws of the Hindus and Muslims. So those texts, the legal texts, they can only tell us about the real ideas and what are the laws for the Hindus and the Muslim. And only a new study of these texts could form the basis of future development in India. So they just wanted to do a deep study, and after that, they thought that on the basis of that only the future development of India is totally dependent on. Fine. So both of them, they started discovering the ancient texts. They started understanding the meaning of those texts, and they translated them, and they make their findings known to others. Even they started telling to others. This project, what they believed about this project was that it is not only going to help the British to learn from Indian culture, but it would also help the Indians to rediscover their own heritage. Britishers will also learn something, and even Indians are going to know about their heritage. Fine. And they could understand how they are losing their glorious past. So in this process, children, the British would become so what they thought, that the Britishers are going to become the guardians of the Indian culture, as well as they are going to become its masters. Whose masters? For the Indian culture, for the Indian text. Fine. So now, influenced by such ideas, many company officials, They were very influenced by their ideas, and they argued, fine, British ought to promote Indian rather than Western learning. Fine. So many of them said, okay, fine. They felt that institutions should be set up to encourage the study of ancient Indian texts and teach Sanskrit and Persian literature and poetry. The officials also thought that Hindus and Muslims ought to be taught what they are already familiar with, and what they are valued, ठीक है, and treasured, not subjects that were alien to them. So people, they said yes, it's fine that we all should go for this, that they should be learning their own text, their own things, because learning something alien means out of the country's language will not be good for them. Fine. So only then they believed, could the British hope to win the place in their hearts. So they said that because of this they can win a place in the hearts of the natives, means the Indians. Fine. And only then the alien rulers expect to be respected by their subjects. And they said because of this we are really going to get respect from the Indian people. With this subject in view, a madrasa. Now, what is a madrasa? Till now, also madrasas are there. It's a word which is used for a place of learning. Fine, you can call it a type of school or a type of college. So, a madrasa was set up at Calcutta in 1781 just to promote the study of Arabic, Persian, and Islamic laws. And secondly, Hindu college was established in Banaras in 1791, and it was to encourage the study of ancient Sanskrit texts that would be useful for the administration of the country. So see, just see. Now see children, see figure 3. You can see the monument of Warren Hastings by Richard Westmacott, 1830, now in Victoria Memorial in Calcutta. So here what this image is showing, it is representing how Orientalists thought that British power in India. Orientalist children, see those who are scholarly, those who are with the scholarly knowledge of the language of culture of Asia. Fine. So you can see Hastings there. Fine. And with at his side is standing a pandit, and the seated one is the munshi. So munshi is the one who can read, write, and can teach Persian as well. So Orientalists, they just needed Indian scholars to teach them vernacular languages. Vernacular means their local languages, their local dialects. So this is shown in this picture. So now children, all the officials of the British were not happy with these views. Fine. So they were really criticizing whatever was happening. Fine. So about them we are going to study now. Fine. From the early 19th century, many British officials, they just criticized this Orientalist vision of learning. They were saying that what is it? They said that knowledge of the East is full of errors. They said that here the knowledge of Eastern culture is full of errors, and it does not have any scientific approaches in it. And whereas even the Eastern literature is non-serious, not at all interesting, and it is light-hearted. So they just argued that it was really wrong on the part of British to spend so much effort in encouraging the study of Arabic and Sanskrit language and literature. So they said, why we are spending a lot of time and effort on teaching people Arabic and Sanskrit languages. Fine. James Mill was the one main critique. Fine. So he was the one who attacked these Orientalists. The British effort, he declared, what he said, should not be to teach what natives wanted or what they respected in order to please them or win a place in their heart. Fine. So they said we should never teach them what they wanted to know or what they respect. It's not the way to win their heart, so do not please them at all. The aim of education ought to be to teach what is useful and practical. They said that the major aim of the education is to teach whatever is useful as well as practical. So he said that Indians should be made familiar with the scientific and technical advances that the West has made, fine, rather than with the poetry and sacred literature of the Orient. So they said that apart, leave this, back, poetry and literature and all that. In spite of this, the Indian should be taught with the scientific and technical advances which the Western culture has, West has made. By the 1830s, now this attack became more sharper on the Orientalists. Now, one of the most outspoken and influential, now the second critique was Thomas Babington Macaulay. Now, he saw what he used to see, means what he used to think was India is an uncivilized country. Means the people here, they are not at all civilized. No branch of Eastern knowledge, according to him, could be compared to what England has produced. So he used to say that we cannot compare the Eastern knowledge with the knowledge of the West. Who could deny, declare Macaulay? What he used to say was a single shelf of a good European library was worth the whole native literature of India and Arabia. It was his thought. Find that a single shelf of a good European library can be, more than the whole native literature of India and Arabia. Now he just said British government in India to just stop wasting the public money in promoting the Oriental languages learning, as it was not at all practical, practically useful. Fine. Now, Macaulay also emphasized what he said need to teach the English language. He said that English language should be promoted. Fine, he felt that knowledge of English would allow Indians to read some of their finest literatures of the world had produced. It would make them aware of the developments in the Western science and philosophy. Teaching of English could thus be a way of civilizing people, changing their taste, values, and culture. So, what he said? He said we should make them learn English as a language so that when they'll be able to read English language, understanding English language, so the people can read the text which are produced, and then even they can learn about the science and philosophy, whatever Western science and philosophy they could be learning. Following Macaulay's minute, the English Education Act 1835 was introduced. So one act was introduced in 1835, that was English Education Act. Now what decision was made under it? The medium of instruction of higher education was made English language. Fine. And to stop the promotion of Oriental institutions like the Calcutta Madrasa and Banaras Sanskrit College, and they just stop promoting the Oriental institutions. Fine, like the madrasa which was opened and the Banaras Sanskrit College. These institutions, they were just seen as the temple of darkness. So whoever is going to be there, what they used to think, he is going to decay. English textbooks now became to be produced for schools. So for the schools now, English, textbooks were being printed or made. Education for commerce. Now children in 1854, the court of directors of the East India Company in London, they sent an educational dispatch. Fine. To whom they sent? To the Governor General of India. Now, who issued this dispatch? Charles Wood, who was the president of the board of control of the company. So that is why this dispatch was known as Wood's dispatch. Now, what was that? Now, what was the education policy that was to be followed in India? They emphasized that the practical benefits of the system of European learning as opposed to the Oriental knowledge. So they just emphasize on a practically based knowledge. Fine. One of the practical uses of dispatch pointed was economic. So they also wanted to learn economics also. European learning, it is said, would enable Indians to recognize the advantages that flow from the expansion of trade and commerce and make them see the importance of developing the resources of the country. So now they started teaching them about commerce as well, about the trade and commerce, how it expanded, and how the developing of resources is very important for the country. Introducing them to European ways of life would change their taste, desire, and create demand for the British goods. For Indians would begin to appreciate and buy things that were produced in Europe. So they wanted just the Indians to adapt the European ways of life, and their taste and desires will automatically change, and they are going to demand for the British goods, and they are going to appreciate the things which are produced in Europe. This was the basic idea. Now, Wood's dispatch also argued that European learning would improve the moral character. Now they said that it is going to improve the moral character of the Indian people. It would make them truthful and honest, and thus supply the company with civil servants who could be trusted and depended upon. And they said that this way, in the coming future, they will get some civil servants who are going to be trusted and who are going to be, serving the British Empire. The literature of the East was not only full of grave errors, it could also not instill in people the sense of duty and commitment to work, nor it develop the skill required for administration. So what they used to think, that our literature is full of errors, and it is not going to make uh, people responsible, and people are not going to work properly, and even nor the skills will be developed, fine, which are really required for the administration. This was their point of view. Following the 1854 dispatch, several measures were introduced by the British. So what all measures they took? Educational departments of the government were set up to extend control over all matters regarding education. So made education develop. Steps were taken to establish a system of university education. So system of university education started 1857, when there was sepoys were just revolting in Meerut and Delhi. So that time children universities were established. They were being established in Calcutta and Madras and Bombay. Fine. Attempts they were making, they were doing attempts to bring about changes within the system of school education. So they wanted to change the school system. So you can see figure 5 is the Bombay University in the 19th century. Fine. Now children, see, the last topic of this module is demand for moral education. Now practical education was strongly criticized by the Christian missionaries in the 19th century. What they wanted? They wanted that the this education should improve the moral character of the people, and morality can come only through the Christian education. So until till then 1830, East India Company was really opposing the missionary activities in India, because they were in fear that missionary activities can provoke people, the local population, and they were suspicious, they are going to make suspicious about the British presence in India. Now, British controlled the territories, and missionaries set up a mission in Sinampore area under the control of Danish East India Company, and they opened a printing press, set up a printing press in 1800, and they established a college in 1818. Now, over the 19th century, missionary schools were all set up in all over the India. 1857, the British government in India was really, opposing this, but they were just supporting the missionary education because they were feeling that if they are going to strongly attack them, so the natives are going to oppose the British government. So, children, this was all about today's topic. Thank you and have a nice day.